Hi, welcome to Small Things Greatly. Today we're going to do something a little different. We usually make chocolates and that's been fun, but we're going to do soaps today. And there's a lot of similarities between the two different crafts. So it's pretty easy and I think that you'll enjoy it. I hope you'll stick around to the end of the show and see what we actually make. But I've got a few little things to show you that we might be doing today, and then there'll be some other things too. So let's put this aside and I'll give you a little quick tutorial on what it takes to make soap. Basically, we're going to be using the containers that we used for chocolate, obviously not the same containers, but you can just use a plastic container or a glass container. I don't bother washing things out a lot because it's soap and I can use the same container again. So this is some blue that I had left over, and I'm actually going to pop that in the microwave and melt that a little while I'll tell you some of the other supplies that we're going to be using. There are different kinds of soaps that you can make. There's a method that I call the Sturbridge Village method that takes days and weeks to cure. You use lye and chemicals, and it makes a very nice soap, but it's a lot of work and I don't have the time. So I do have time to make this and I enjoy it. So I get a basic soap at a craft store, and it comes in containers like this. This is a 2-pound block, and there are different types that you can get. This, as you can see, is a white opaque soap, and this is good for certain things. And then there's also a clear glycerin soap that's good too. So comes in the same kind of container. Usually costs about $10 for a block like this that's 2 pounds, but you can use the coupons for 50% off, so half that price. So you can get some nice soaps for, usually they'll use like 2 or 3 ounces each, 3 or 4 ounces each. So it comes out pretty inexpensive, just $1 or $2 when you add in all the coloring and the scents that you might want to add. And these are sectioned off so that there are 16 of these. No, there's not. There's 32. There's 32, so that they're an ounce each. So sometimes on the molds, it'll actually give you a little hint, and it'll tell you that it's a 3-ounce mold or a 4-ounce mold. So you could just cut up enough of what you need, put it into one of those containers, and use that. I'm Italian, so I just fill the container. I have extra, and you always find something to do with the extra. So sort of like when I cook, there's always going to be more. So when I make soap, there's a little bit more of that as well. So that's basically the different types of glycerin soap that you can use. This one's a shea butter. I've tried different ones. This is an olive oil soap. I've tried different ones. I don't feel a big difference in the types of like the lather that I get from it, but you might like one thing more than another. Something that's important, this is called suspension formula, and it makes it so that if we add something, like we're going to be adding some oatmeal as an exfoliant, if we add that, it doesn't all sink to the bottom if it's the suspension formula. Now that being said, it isn't always perfect and it doesn't always work, but for the most part, that's the idea if you do see something that says suspension formula. This one that I use a lot doesn't actually say it, but you kind of will get a feel for it after you use it a little bit. A little bit about the molds that I use. This one is one of my favorites, and it's called a no-spill mold because, as you can see, it goes right down to the bottom here, so it doesn't tip. And I love this mold. I can't get another one. It's started to crack a little bit because I've had it for years and I use it a lot. So there comes duct tape, and I've kind of fixed it up as much as I can. But if I could find another one, I'd be all set. This one I love because it's Japanese symbols, and they are the symbols for tranquility, energy, happiness, and love. And there have been times that people haven't seen that the writing is on the bottom, and I've gotten credit for learning how to speak Japanese, and they think that I actually know what these symbols mean. But it's only because the letters are on the bottom and the words that I do know. So that's one of the ones I like, and when we get that out of there, we're going to put that first, because if we were to use a clear, it wouldn't show up as well. You wouldn't be able to tell what the actual symbol was. So I'm going to take that out and see how that's going and if it's melting, and we'll have this ready to pour in there. Another thing that I did want to mention, I showed you these 2-pound blocks. If you make a lot of it, you could use, it comes in even bigger containers, and this is 10 pounds. But for the most part, you know, you can get started for fairly inexpensively. I would say the molds are maybe $2 or $3 each, and you can use the coupons on those too. So for under 10 bucks, or definitely under 20, you can get some coloring and some scents, and try that. Well, you know what kind of scents I mean, not the other kind of scents, but you'll get scents that smell good. Can't really tell if you'll have other kind of scents in your head. Okay, so you can see, same color blue as my tablecloth and work covering here, but it started to melt. And the middle part isn't melted. I'm gonna try and break that up a little bit. I just put it in for another minute or so. Sometimes it'll say to do it at half power on the microwave, but like I said, I do what works for me. So you should do the same thing. If you think that it's, you know, start by following the directions, but then kind of tweak it and make it work for yourself. Now, a little bit more about the molds. That, like I said, that was one of my favorites. Most of them are clear plastic, but as you can see, they don't have this no tip feature. There's a company called Life of the Party that is great, and they do a lot of different things. So they actually make a lot of chocolate molds as well, and I like their stuff. So I'm using something from them. After you use the molds a lot, you can see they start to break, but I'm talking, I use it a lot. So these will last you for years if you take care of them. And as I said before, I don't really wash them out an awful lot. You don't really need to, because when you're popping it, everything's coming out of here. It's not, maybe there's stuff on the other side or on the little parts in between, but for the most part, there's nothing here. It clears off completely. Another mold that I love is this seashell one, and that's the same one that we used when I showed you the other finished product. So what we're gonna do when that comes out and we pour a little bit here on the bottom layer, we're gonna pour it so that this is covered on the whole bottom part. But on this, I was thinking maybe just to pour a little bit of the opaque one in here. And it's already got its coloring in it, but when we do another one, I'll show you how we do the coloring. So when that comes out, we're gonna do that. This one, there's some small soaps in here, which are a little bit tinier, and there's some that are flowers and leaves, which is nice. You could also use other things that aren't supposed to necessarily be for soap. This is supposed to be for Oreo cookies, and I just, as much as I love Oreo cookies and chocolate, they were almost like too thick. So I use this one for soap, and it makes nice little soaps that you can give as gifts. You can put a couple in one little bag and tie that up, and it looks nice. This is a Jell-O mold, so I use those. This one is really meant for soap, but it's got these little balls on the outside so that it can be used like for a massage kind of soap when you're taking a shower. It gives us a little bit of a texture there, so it's nice. So let's take that out and see what we've got. Looks like it's pretty well done. I just use plastic spoons just so that I don't have to wash them as much. You know, if I use my regular spoons, I wouldn't be able to do that. So I saved my little Wendy's spoons from my Frosties that I never use the spoon for when I have Frosties. You don't have to spray the mold with anything. They release by themselves. So a little bit later, we're going to put some alcohol on to get rid of bubbles. But for now, we're just going to pour a little bit into here. And I'm just covering the bottom so that I cover up the design. And that way it's going to show up a little better. Hopefully when we finish this and I can show you the finished product, you'll see what I mean. Now what I have in this bottle is alcohol, just plain old alcohol in a spray bottle. And when I spray it on here, it just gets rid of the little bubbles that are there. And we're also going to spray it later, but that'll come later and we'll be able to tell you about that when it happens. But I just want to let you know that's what we're doing. I'm going to pour it in here, but like I said, I'm not going to do the whole bottom layer. If you're just getting started and you haven't done this before, if you want to just cover that whole bottom layer, you can, and it'll include that little part there. But it's kind of nice to have the background will be something different if we just do this little part in the opaque one that you don't see through. Now in this soap that I just remelted, I had already added the bluish coloring and some flavoring in, not flavoring, sorry. It's from me making chocolate, I get that. I had already added in the scent. So I didn't do that, but when we do the next one, I will show you how we're gonna include that. And just a little hint, some of these are going over a little tiny bit. And what's gonna happen, we can just cut that off later if we want to. So I'm gonna spray it, get rid of the bubbles, and then I'm gonna just leave that here a minute rather than put it in the fridge right away, because when you're bringing it over, sometimes things move around a little bit and it kind of shakes it up, and we don't want to do that. It won't matter as much on this one that we're doing with the Asian symbols, but it would matter on this one, because if it moves around, it's going to get a little bit funky and we won't be able to have that nice background. So I'm just going to slide it over here. And then we might as well do a little something here. I'll try and make some of these with what's left of this bluish one we have. So even though there aren't a lot of blue flowers or blue leaves, we're going to do that. Make a blue daffodil here. Mix things up. And that's going to pretty much use what I have for the soap. We're just spraying it. There actually were no bubbles on this one, but I'm just going to spray it just because I told you that's what you're supposed to do, so I'm going to follow my rules. So that's going to go into the fridge for a few minutes to harden up, and then we'll be able to do the next layer. So while that's getting to the point where I can put it into the fridge or the freezer, either one is fine, I'm going to show you how we actually cut things up, because it'll give you a way to do it right from the very beginning. So we'll get this clear soap is going to be next. That's going to be our next layer on here. And you can just pop it right out of here. Comes in these nice containers that you could use again to keep your soap in. There we go. And I just use, I guess this is a cheese cutter. I've seen them with the ruffled edges on them and they cost $7 or $8. This one wasn't expensive and it works, and you'll get a little bit of a workout. So you're just gonna go like this, and you can figure out whatever way works for you. Sometimes I do the short way first, sometimes I do the long, but you're just gonna use this to cut up your blocks, and you don't necessarily have to do into these 1 ounce blocks that I had told you about. You can do bigger pieces, but since the score lines are there, we might as well kind of follow the rules and do the 1 ounce blocks. And you can do it so that you cut quite a few of these and then go back and cut a couple at the same time. So that's how we do that. I'm going to put these into that plastic container, and we're going to put this in the fridge. When we throw them into the container, you can go pretty much to the top, because they're going to also have some space in there. So when they melt, they'll even out and go a little bit shorter, sort of like when we do the chocolates. So this is a container, like I said, I don't usually clean them out, and I'm going to throw our clear glycerin pieces into here. And as I told you, you can go kind of up to the top because there's some spaces in there, and as it melts, you'll be able to figure it out. So this is going to go in the microwave, and it'll make a little less than this, but obviously on these you are just putting in the very beginning, and just a little bit, so we want to have a little bit more. So we fill this up, and it probably won't do all of these, but it'll get us started. So I'm going to do this for another minute. Well, not another minute, just a minute. But what I'll do, these you can see, they're not moving around and they're actually almost solid. So I'm going to put these in the fridge for now. There are all sorts of things you can add in. When that comes out, it's just going to be clear. So there are colorings that we can add in, and as you can tell, these have been around for a while, but they work, and your hands might get a little stained, but it comes off eventually. Sometimes it comes in little tubes like this. This is a green, a blue, there's purple. Sometimes it's hard to tell what the actual color is. Even though you think it'd be simple, it's not. And sometimes I'll write it on here, but it seems to always come off. There's not an awful lot that you can do. I'll usually put like a little initial up on the top here so I can tell. Because sometimes what looks like it's going to be blue, all of a sudden you put in one little drop and it's not blue, it's green. So on these other little ones, this is a purple, so I've marked it up on the top. So you usually just need maybe a drop or two of this, and you'll see as we go along, that one is easy to figure out. The scent of what we wanted to do is probably a little different because there are certain things they say you should do in terms of adding drops per, maybe, I think it's per pound, you're supposed to add 16 drops, I think. But I kind of just do it by dropping it in and then smelling it, and I do it to my nose and what I want it to smell like. You can also add in glitter or some kind of this, this is like a coloring powder or dust in gold. There's soap glitter, so you could add that in. You can add in like a lot of different colors if you wanted to. What we're going to do on this first show is kind of an overview, so you could do pretty much anything. And then we may do another show later where we can give you a few little specialty things, like maybe we'll make something for kids and add in some of that glitter and maybe a little toy that they have to actually use the soap and until they can get to what the kind of prize is. So once again, the scents come in all different types, and different companies make them. And sometimes they have a bottle that has the dropper on it, and that makes it kind of easy to put things, to put the scent in there. Sometimes it's not a bottle like that, it's just a bottle like this. So it might be good if you put it in the cap full and then pour it in. That way you have a little bit of a rough idea. But as I said, I don't always do exactly what they tell me to. I just kind of do it so that it works for me. So let's check on what's in the microwave, and it's probably going to need a little more time. That was just to get us started. That was just a minute on high power. And it doesn't even look like anything's changed. There's a little bit down on the bottom that's melting, but for the most part, no, it needs a lot more. It's a little softer, but still not too hot. So I'm going to put that back in for another minute. Or 111, as I told you. And just be aware, too, that that can be really hot when you take it out. Right now it's not because it's only done 1 or 2 times on when we did this other one. But just be aware if your hands are sensitive, just use a pot holder. Why can't I think of that? A pot holder, and you can help that. And most of the time you won't have a microwave that's quite as tall as mine or as high as mine, and so it'll be a little easier to take out. But we like that little extra challenge, and plus we figured if it was built up there that people couldn't see whether it was dirty or not. So unless I have the Celtics over my house, nobody's going to know whether that microwave needs to be cleaned. So that's my thought behind it. I'm going to check on what's in the fridge now, and it really only takes a few minutes to do that little tiny part of the first layer. So let's see if that's going to be done. At least I know it is on the flour one, because that when I actually put it in, it was actually okay. And I can touch it and it doesn't break, or I don't go into anything else of the liquid. And the reason that's important is if you're pouring on another batch right on top of this, and if you're pouring another batch right on top of this and it's hot, if you were to pour into that little part in the middle, it might break it down and go right through, and then you would, instead of having this nice little design here, you would see the clear liquid go right through there, if that makes sense. This is not done yet. You can tell it's still got a little bit of a liquid underneath there, and that's because this is a little thicker than these. So we're going to put this back in, and let's check on the microwave. And I can tell it's started to melt, but it's still going to need a little bit more. So I'm not sure, I can't tilt this too much, but the only thing that's not melted is the stuff that's in the middle. And I'm just going to stir that around a little bit. I'm going to be coloring this, so it's okay that my spoon's dirty and that I've got a little bit of oatmeal in there, because that's what we're going to be adding to this. And like anything else in the microwave, when this starts to melt, it's going to continue melting even after it comes out of the microwave. So I probably could let it sit here for a little bit and it would end up melting, but I'm going to put it in at half power this time for just another minute and finish that off. One thing that we're going to be adding, and that I love to add, is oatmeal. And what's nice about that is it's an exfoliant, so when people are using that with the soap, it just kind of roughs up the first layer of skin or your dead skin cells. I try not to put an awful lot in because I don't want it in people's showers, but if you put in a little bit, it kind of does the job, and it's a nice add-in. And as you can see with the soaps that we're doing that are the sea theme and the seashell theme, on the background, it kind of looks, if you use the right color, it kind of looks like you've got sand there. Sometimes I'll just do like a light color and put in the oatmeal and it almost looks like sand. So you could add that in. A few other things that people add in, sometimes they add in ground up coffee beans. I've tried poppy seed. You can add in lavender. So there's a few different things that you can do. I'm going to take this out and maybe add a little bit of the coloring in there, and then we're going to continue things on the next show because this took a little bit longer than I'd planned, and then that way you'll get to see the finished product from this, and we'll also maybe teach you a few new things. So let's get this out of there. And it's pretty well melted. And I'm going to add in a little green since we did blue on the first one. And I hope you can see this because it's kind of cool. Just a drop or two, and it starts to change, and we really don't need an awful lot. And it gives you a nice color. There's a few big blocks in here that aren't completely melted, but they will melt. And we didn't do a scent yet. We have a little bit of a scent in that, but this one's called Tranquil Waters, so it makes sense with the soaps that we're doing that are the seashell and the sea theme. So, like I said, this one doesn't have a dropper on it, so I'm just going to add a capful or two for that, and you're just going to stir that around. I'm going to add it over here to this little batch that we made. And one thing that's important is we're going to be taking the alcohol again and spraying it right onto there. And what that's going to do is it's just going to help the two layers adhere to each other. That alcohol will evaporate and then the two layers will adhere better. So I'm going to add a little bit of this, and once again, no rhyme or reason or an actual amount, but just a little something that you'll kind of tell as you go along whether you want to add more or less. So we've got the coloring, the scent, and the alcohol. Coloring, scent, and the oatmeal, and then we sprayed it with alcohol. So that's going to go into here. You want to be careful not to overfill it, but if it's a little under, it's all right. If it's over, obviously it's going to go spilling everywhere, which we don't want. And then we're going to hit it with the alcohol again, just to get rid of the bubbles. And I'm hoping you'll be able to see that, but if not, just take my word for it. And as soon as this gets a little bit more solid, we'll throw it back in the fridge, or like I said, it could go in the freezer too. That's going to be all we're going to do for now. Maybe we might have a little time to just show you one thing real quick. I was telling you that sometimes a little bit will go over here. And then what happens is after it's in the fridge, you can kind of just take that off with your finger or a knife so that you'll end up having a nice clear surface there. You can see a little bit here where there's a little bit over. I just use my fingernail to make a little line, and then I take that off. So we're gonna just clean that up a little bit, and then we'll add that afterwards. And if you join us next time, you'll get to see the finished product on these soaps that we started. Thanks for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed it here on Small Things Greatly.